Mist creeps off the English Channel like a thief tonight, curling around spear points and muffling the snorts of 1,000 war horses anxious for dawn. On the pebbled strand at Pevensey, great oaken hulls squat like sea dragons pulled ashore, their keels still weeping brine from a crossing spurred by papal blessing and iron ambition. Silk pennons stitched in Rouen flutter almost lazily, as though unaware they will soon breach the sky over Kings. A few miles inland on the narrow ridge locals call Senlac, fires glow beneath wicker shields stacked into windbreaks. There, Harold Godwinson's housecarls, fresh from shattering a Viking invasion up north, listen to the crackle of oak and wonder if their oaths, sworn in barns and mead halls, can withstand one more sunrise of blood. Somewhere beyond the tree line, the faintest echo of chanting carries in the damp air. Non nobis domine, non nobis. It's the Normans at prayer, swords laid crosswise on mailed knees, asking a foreign god to make foreign land fall quickly. Between the two camps lies pasture dotted with grazing oxen that tomorrow will panic at the smell of hot iron. Between the two claimants lies a crown still warm from Edward the Confessor's brow, worth every risk a duke and a thane can conjure. And above them all, a waning half-moon hangs like a cut nail, waiting to scratch one name forever into Europe's ledger of rulers. If you hold your breath, you can almost feel history tremble, about to roll its dice on a sloped Sussex hillside where real-time, iron, and bone will decide whether England speaks Norman French or remains the island of shield wall sagas. Begin 20 years earlier in a wood-beamed hall in Winchester. Edward the Confessor, childless, spectral-eyed, already fonder of relics than of statecraft, raises a trembling hand toward his brother-in-law Godwin's tall, golden-haired son, Harold. The gesture contains both promise and peril. Promise, because Harold's sinew and wits have kept Welsh warbands at bay and pulled Wessex tax coffers fat again. Peril, because across the narrow sea a younger man is taking notes. William of Normandy, bastard-born yet steel-willed, visits Edward's court and sees in that raised hand the outline of his own future. At a torch-lit supper, Edward, perhaps joking, perhaps sincere, lets fall a phrase about bequeathing England to his Norman cousin should Providence leave him heirless. William polishes that phrase like a coin, spending it later in Rome where Pope Alexander II, eager to curb English clerical independence, blesses a Norman claim as if it were crusade. Harold, meanwhile, masters the home front. He reorganizes fleets for coastal patrols, brokers marriage for his sister with Northumbria's iron-hearted Earl Morcar, and quietly collects oaths from minor thanes hungry for royal favor. Yet in 1064, blown ashore by storm, or lured by Norman subterfuge, Harold finds himself an honored guest in William's ducal court. Politics there is velvet covering steel. Over wine, William presses Harold's hands to holy relics and extracts an oath, fealty to William's future English crown. Whether Harold swears willingly, duplicitously, or under duress will fuel monkish quarrels for centuries, but the relics remember. When Edward dies in January 1066, the Witenagemot elevates Harold without hesitation. In Rouen, William's knuckles blanch white on a sword hilt. In Rome, the Pope dispatches a consecrated banner, a strip of silk that will flutter over invasion decks like a righteous wind. Harold's first trial descends not from France but from Norway. King Harold Hardrada, last thunder of the Viking age, sails up the Humber with 300 dragon prows, allied to Harold's estranged brother Tostig. At Stamford Bridge on 25 September, Harold's forced march army annihilates the Norwegians in a display of speed that future generals will study with incredulity. Yet victory costs blood and breath. Even as the last Viking shields float downstream, word reaches Harold that Normandy's sails have touched Sussex sand. He pushes his men south, 250 miles in less than a fortnight, gathering feared levies en route. Though many arrive barefoot, harvest still under their fingernails. On 13 October, they crest Caldbeck Hill and behold Duke William's standard less than a day's march away. Scouts report Norman cavalry, armored destriers unknown to the English foot soldier, practicing feigned retreats along the valley. Housecarls tighten their shield straps. For them, battle is intimate. Stand, lock, hack, endure. Their axes, 5-foot shafts tipped with bearded blades, can sever horse legs, but only if horse bow's low enough. William's camp hums with 3 languages: Norman French, Flemish, and Breton. His knights jest about English spearmen who fight on foot like peasants, yet they respect the axe after a blacksmith demonstrates its bite on a pig carcass. William orders a strategy both simple and audacious: archers to soften, infantry to press, cavalry to break, and above all, flexibility to fake flight, drawing Saxons downhill where formation frays. He spends the eve reviewing relics: a vial of St. Valerie's bone fragment, the papal banner, and that old promise Edward whispered years before. Dawn, 14th October. A bright autumn sun burns off mist by mid-morning. William rides before his host, visor up, shouting that any man fearing death has leave to return to Normandy but must swim the channel naked for cowardice. Only a single jester bolts, the rest laugh, slam lance butts, and chant Dex I. God help us. Across the ridge, Harold positions his line along a natural rampart, earthwork dug by Roman hands, thick woodland flanking both ends. The shield wall, 6 men deep, gleams with round helms and gilt-bossed shields painted with dragons, crosses, or simple sunbursts. At its center, Harold plants the royal dragon standard. Beside him stand brothers Gurth and Leofwine, faces still drawn from Stamford exhaustion. Norman archers advance first, loosing clouds that arc gracefully but thud harmlessly into shields angled roof-like against the slope. Shafts ricochet, useless. William signals infantry, spearmen, and armored axemen to slog uphill. They collide with oak, not straw. English shields absorb weight, Housecarls counterswing great axes, splitting Norman kite shields as if they were breadboards. The first assault recoils, moans of crushed bone trailing downhill. William commits cavalry. 50 mailed knights pound forward, hooves striking flint sparks. As they near the wall, they lower 60-pound lances, expecting the Saxons to blanch. Instead, a roar, unlike anything they've heard, out, 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 erupts. Axes flash. A horse topples, hamstrung, catapulting its rider into spears. The rest wheel away, spooked. Norman ranks wobble. Rumor ripples that William is dead beneath the carnage. Panic freckles the host. Bretons on the left break and run. English wings orrery chasing. William, helmet dented but skull intact, finds an elevated mound, shoves back visor, and bellows his identity. Rally horns cut through chaos. Knights regroup, flank the overextended Saxons, hacking them to pieces before they can regain the ridge. First blood of overconfidence stains Senlac grass. Harold adjusts, closing gaps in his line, but his younger men have tasted pursuit and like it. William sees their appetite and devises repetition. Feigned retreat. A second cavalry charge slams, pretends collapse, feigns flight. Predictably, fired youths chase downhill. Normans pivot, encircle, slaughter, shield wall thins. Housecarls drag bodies to patch holes. They cannot patch fatigue. Noon sun sears helm tops. Arrows now fired at flatter trajectory begin finding faces, thighs. William introduces a fresh element. Crossbowmen from Poitou. Their bolts heavier, flatter, punching through linden shield faces. Harold's standard remains, but brothers Gurth and Leofwine lie somewhere beyond reach, slain in melee skirmish. Each death is a psychic fissure. Housecarls fight harder, yet morale drips away like blood through mail links. Late afternoon. William orders all archers to angle high, not low. The tactic is gamble. Volley will rain on heads, not shields. A shaft, perhaps guided by chance, perhaps providence of Norman chroniclers, pierces Harold's right eye. He staggers, clutching shaft, then drops beneath surging attackers. The royal dragon tilts, then falls. Norman infantry spear forward, hacking a breach while William's personal guard drives wedge toward the banner's void. The shield wall collapses like timber under axe stroke. Resistance devolves into island pockets. Some Housecarls form a final ring around Harold's body but are hewn down, recorded by one chronicler as making their shields redder than their cloaks. As twilight bleeds over Sussex, William surveys the field. Mounds of dead radiate from where Harold fell. Horses step gingerly among shattered axes. He orders the papal banner planted beside his own, signaling divinely sanctioned triumph. His clerks begin tallying names for reward rolls. Every thane captured alive is ransom. Every corpse becomes land to redistribute. Out across the ridge, shadowed figures flee toward forest, escapees who will carry news north, seeding resistance that will take William years to crush. Dawn after Hastings breaks over a field still breathing steam from the night's rain and the fresh warmth of 30,000 bodies. Norman priests in mud-spattered white stoles pick through the carnage, chanting low masses over friend and foe alike. Part piety, part public relations for a conqueror who must persuade England that God himself has spoken. A squad of knights searching for trophies finds a mutilated corpse near the fallen dragon standard. One leg stripped of mail, face gashed open, an arrow still jutting from the skull's orbit. None can swear it is Harold until Edith Swanwick, the king's longtime handfast wife, is summoned from a nearby nunnery. She kneels amid buzzing blowflies, lifts what remains of the head, and by a small birthmark below the left shoulder blade confirms her lover. William will allow no royal burial in Westminster. He orders the body interred at Waltham Abbey beneath a cairn of beach pebbles to watch forever toward the Norman Sea. It is a message as sharp as any sword. This land has a new master. William stays in Hastings long enough to dig redoubts on the high ground, earth and timber bastions called motte-and-bailey castles that breed overnight like mushrooms after rain. Then he pushes east to Romney, where local defenders had massacred a Norman scouting party weeks earlier. His army storms the village, drags men from alehouses, and hangs them on door lintels as object lessons. At Dover, the garrison blinks at the fires of Romney and surrenders after token resistance. William installs his half-brother Odo as Castellan, begins work on a second motte, and exacts oaths of fealty from Kentish thanes. Oaths sealed not merely on relics but on parchment charters countersigned by Norman clerks whose Latin legalisms will become the architecture of English feudalism. Meanwhile, London boils. Word of Harold's death fractures the city's mood into terror and bravado. Earls Edwin and Morcar, Harold's uneasy allies, push the wit on to crown the teenage Edgar Atheling, Edward the Confessor's great-nephew, as a figurehead whose sinews they might puppet. But the city's merchants, worried about burned stock and blocked trade routes, waver. When William's scouts report the Thames Bridge is barricaded, the Duke declines frontal assault. Instead, he swings southwest through Sussex, Surrey, and Hampshire, burning granaries in his wake and gathering hostages from each shire. Panic precedes him like a herald. Refugees jam London's gates with tales of plundered mills and hobbling oxen. Food prices triple. Faced with famine before winter's first frost, the Wyton caves. At Wallingford, Archbishop Stigand and Earl Edwin meet William on the riverbank, offer keys to London, and hand over Edgar Atheling in symbolic chains of velvet. Christmas Day 1066. Westminster Abbey smells of damp wool and lamp oil. Warriors with salt-stiff beards line the nave, gripping spears that clack against marble whenever a knee buckles from exhaustion. As the coronation liturgy reaches its climax, Norman guards outside the abbey misinterpret the congregation's shouted acclamations as riot and set fire to nearby houses to preempt uprising. Smoke drifts through stained glass. Inside, William flinches, half draws his sword, then recovers composure just long enough for Archbishop Aldred to place Edward's crown upon his head. Thus an empire of charred rafters and uneasy prayers is born. The months that follow write the recipe for medieval England. Any thane who fought at Hastings and still breathes must ride to Berkhamsted to renew loyalty on land. William now doles like a blackjack dealer, an estate in return for mounted service, a priory's tithe diverted to castle maintenance, a daughter wed to a Breton captain as glue between cultures. Saxon nobles who resist are dispossessed, their manors transferred to Norman barons whose names, Fitz Osborne de Warenne de Bohun, will echo through centuries of parchment rolls. To guard new holdings, William orders stone keeps at Exeter, Warwick, Lincoln, and York, each sprouting curtain walls that overshadow cruck-built villages like iron halos. Revolt is inevitable. In 1067, while William tours Normandy to parade his new crown, Kentish men seize Dover Castle's half-finished ditch. Odo storms it back, blinding prisoners in rows to discourage imitation. The next year, William returns to crush a western rising centered on Exeter. He starves the city for 18 days, then carves eyes from hostages before breach negotiations. Another lesson in visual policy. More dangerous is the northern insurgency of 1069, when Danish longships under King Sweyn sail up the Humber, link with Northumbrian rebels, and massacre the Norman garrison at York. William rides north in winter, burning villages from Humber to Tees in what the Anglo-Saxon chronicle will call harrying. Fields are salted, grain stores torched, and unknown thousands perish of famine. England learns that Norman justice is swift, collective, and remembers slights in ledger ink the color of oxblood. Yet conquest is not merely whip and fire. William retools governance. He integrates the shire moot and hundred court into his feudal hierarchy, ensuring that Saxon reeves still administer local law but under the eye of Norman sheriffs answerable to the crown. The resulting fusion, French feudal overlordship atop an Anglo-Danish legal substrate, creates the unique common law that later lawyers will praise for its flexibility. The king demands 2 sheriffs' seer feasts per year, where French wine flows beside English ale, and bilingual charters become common. Monastic scriptoria bristle with scribes compiling land grants in both Latin and Old English. One day, this bilingual bureaucracy will birth the Domesday book, but the impetus starts here, in the chaos of consolidation. Language itself turns borderland. At court, Norman French dominates. In village alehouses, Old English endures. Over decades, they intermarry in tongues. Saxon cow becomes French beef, once cooked for a castle feast. Sheep on a hillside becomes mutton on the baron's trencher. The hybrid Middle English gestates, seeded by Hastings' arrow storms and papal banners. Even literature carries battle scar tissue. Within a decade, Bayeux's cathedral chapter commissions a 70-meter tapestry of wool and linen that stitches William's claim with such narrative conviction that future historians will treat its embroidered scenes as gospel. Yet hidden among the stitches are sly Anglo-Saxon jokes. Dogs chasing birds, a naked man pointing skyward, signatures perhaps of subversive English seamsters. Religious policy follows conquest logic. William replaces recalcitrant bishops with Norman appointees schooled in continental Romanesque reform. Stone cathedrals emerge: Durham, Winchester's new nave, Canterbury's rebuild. These ecclesiastical fortresses mirror the keeps rising over market towns, a reminder that salvation and submission share masonry crews. Papal legates visit to ensure Gregorian reforms flourish. In return, William refuses to swear fealty to Rome, keeping English investiture under crown control. The Pope, wary of jeopardizing a powerful ally, indulges the defiance, a diplomatic dance sparked by a crown that rolled on Sussex soil. By 1085, William, aging and paranoid, orders a great survey to know fully each height of land and every ox and plow thereon. In less than a year, royal commissioners interrogate shire courts, abbots, reeves, and even villains. The data, compiled into 2 volumes, leave contemporaries awestruck. Nothing of such administrative reach exists in Europe. Domesday Book does more than tally taxes. It fossilizes conquest. Every acre is tied to a name, mostly Norman. Every Saxon who once held wide estates is shrunken to subtenancy or vanished. Yet the survey also confirms England's productive resilience. Despite harryings, manorial revenues impress continental observers. William's gamble has yielded a cash cow ready for continental campaigns. The king dies in 1087 near Rouen, stomach ruptured after a horse stumbled on hot cinders. His corpulent corpse, crammed into a stone sarcophagus too small, bursts during the funeral. Monks flee the stench, an ungallant metaphor for an empire squeezed too tight. But his tombstone will outlast barons' feuds. So will the channels he dug through England's polity. Hastings' legacy radiates farther than feudal contracts. By knitting England into Norman Angevin networks, William opens the island to Mediterranean trade, crusading zeal, and continental art. Gothic arches soar in Canterbury. Troubadour lyrics glide from Aquitaine to London. The chivalric code, tempered by English pragmatism, evolves into something new. Jury trials for knights, Magna Carta protests, eventually parliamentary murmurs. Strip away the romance and you still see Senlac's slope beneath these later edifices. Every parley, statute, and protest is a footnote to the day a duke gambled everything on arrowloft and cavalry agility. The battle also standardizes time. Norman clerks date documents by regnal years rather than indiction cycles, aligning England's chronicle with continental computations. Shire courts adopt written writs sealed with green wax, portable, incontrovertible evidence of king's will. Literacy trickles downward. Monasteries teach villains' sons to read Norman French so they can serve as clerks, sowing seeds for a literate yeoman class. 1,000 chain reactions bloom from one afternoon's carnage. Yet ghosts linger. Peasants plowing Senlac Ridge swear oxen shy at certain patches of soil, sniffing ancient blood. Local legends claim nightingales avoid the hill because their songs were drowned by screams. Archaeologists, excavating in the 1970s, find arrowheads twisted from impact angles matching Bayeux depictions. Carbon dating confirms the year. Even modern motorway construction reroutes to preserve what planners still call battlefield, as if the event remains active, still shaping asphalt. And so, nearly a millennium on, Hastings teaches its essential paradox: that a single battle can feel both brutally immediate, fletchings slicing air, hooves cracking ribs, and impossibly far, its echoes obscured by centuries of retelling. It reminds us that chance, a stray arrow, a rumor of a duke's death, a shield wall's 5-minute lapse, can redirect cultural DNA. It warns leaders that legitimacy forged in steel must be recast daily in parchment, stone, and language. And it invites every listener to stand on that Sussex ridge in imagination, tasting iron on the wind, deciding whether to hold the line or chase glory downhill. So, if this journey through fog-soaked meadows and politics sharp as spear points sparked your sense of historical adventure, don't let the feeling fade like campfire embers on the Channel breeze. Share this story with a friend who thinks the Middle Ages was just mud and monks. Show them the high-stakes calculus that changed English, law, even the menus of Christmas feasts. Smash that like button as firmly as a Housecarl's axe bite. It costs you less breath than shouting, "Out, out!" but helps the algorithm keep epic tales marching to your screen. Subscribe and ring the bell, so our next campaign, whether across the snow-cloaked fields of Bannockburn, the sun-baked ridges of Lepanto, or the cratered beaches of Tarawa, finds you armored in curiosity. And drop your sharpest questions below. Would Harold have held the ridge if his men hadn't chased? Could William have conquered without papal backing? We read every comment faster than a Norman squire saddling a destrier at dawn. History is a forge. Together we'll keep the hammer ringing.